in terms of the food industry, beef is responsible for the highest emissions. And what very few people know is that it ranks second. So it's a really big global industry. Rice, rice is a staple for kind of for 4 billion people is the last number that I've seen used. It's grown and eaten in every part of the world, every continent except Antarctica. But so it's a properly global food with this huge emissions issue. The fields are kind of irrigated throughout the growing season. So effectively the fields are kept in a kind of flooded state throughout the growing season. And the reason for that primarily is actually about weed control. But the kind of obviously the drawback of that is that first of all you use an enormous amount of water. So I think per kilogram of basmati rice, kind of conventional rice farms will use about 5,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of rice. So if you think about 1 kilo of rice sitting on a supermarket shelf, and then imagine 5,000 Evian bottles, lined up in front of it, it's a kind of pretty extraordinary statistic that. So yes, farmers keep the fields flooded throughout the growing season to control weed growth. That means that the soil itself is anaerobic, so there's no oxygen in the soil because obviously oxygen can't kind of penetrate the layer of water. So you have anaerobic conditions in the soil, and those kind of anaerobic conditions where there's organic matter as well, that's like the perfect environment for methanogens to thrive. Methanogens are little methane producing kind of microbes. I read about it in a book called Drawdown, and it's a group of the kind of leading climate scientists around the world came together, and I think it's described as 50 different things that we can do to reverse climate change. One of the chapters is about rice, and it kind of starts off by setting the scene. There's this enormous issue with enormous kind of environmental cost associated with conventional rice farming, and very quickly though the chapter moves on to the solution, which is this more sustainable kind of farming method. So it was reading about it in Drawdown just completely blew my mind. On the one hand I was a bit kind of horrified that the food that I eat quite a lot of sort of has this huge footprint that I had no idea about. But obviously then great news, there's a kind of solution, there's a way of making it much better. So after a kind of little bit of Googling, I realized, disappointed to see that basically none of the big brands that that I kind of grew up with would be familiar to you, none of them really were doing what I would regard as anything like enough to kind of support this more sustainable approach. So basically I thought that's just crazy. There's a big problem. There's like a relatively straightforward solution. Like, why are we not doing everything possible to back that solution? That's why we're here, because I feel like there's probably hasn't been enough action in the industry. And my belief is that when you have consumers demanding change and asking for change, that's when you get the speed of change, I think, can kind of ramp up a bit. So that's really our role here, is to kind of raise awareness, as I said before, and hopefully just kickstart a bit of a shift in the industry to adopt this more sustainable method at a bigger scale.